We'll start with the .NET 6 application, a WPF application, and let us create it as loading animation 1. You can go ahead with .NET 6 or .NET Framework or anything you want, because the concept is going to be generic and it will be applicable to all the frameworks. First instance, I will create, as a first step, I will create a folder, controls. Let's create a new control. I'm not going to use custom control. I'm going to just use a user control. So what I mean is, if you go to the new item, add new item, show all templates. For WPF, we will have user control and we also have custom control. I'm going to go with user control, but if you want to make it as a custom control, it's totally up to you. All you need to do is just define your backend or define your code behind accordingly. Everything is almost going to be the same. Let's call it as animated rectangle. It's going to be a very simple one. So we will create some resources which we will only define at a later stage, but currently we'll go with just for us to see how it goes. We'll add a background, but later we'll remove the background. We'll add a white background, zoom in here as well. Let's create a small rectangle, and rectangle does not have a background, it has only fill. Let's fill it with red color to begin with, and we'll adjust the height as 50 and width as 50. Okay, then what we do, we have the stroke. Let's make it gray. Later we will change this color. Stroke thickness, let's keep it 1 and remove the fill. This is our rectangle at present. Now we will keep the stroke as 2. Fine. 50 50 and stroke is 2. Let us quickly add a small before we add any kind of animation, we will do one thing. We will bring this animated rectangle to our main window, and then we will do a small debug to see whether it is working or not. And in our case, now it is present in a different namespace. Whatever is our current namespace, loading animation 1, right? So we call it as CTRL control. So loading animation 1 dot control. So loading animation 1, inside which we have the folder called controls, and that's where we have the controls animation. So inside which control animated control. So rectangle should be in the middle now. Since we didn't build our application solution yet, we are having this error. Let us build the solution, so it should be fine now. There we go. Our rectangle is in the middle, and it looks fine. Now what we do, we will try to add a small message here. We no longer need this background for our grid. We don't need it, and instead of grid, we can put it inside. First, we say the design height as 100 and the design width as 100. Any of design height and width will not affect anything. And instead of grid, we put it inside a virtual box. I'm sorry, the whole grid we put it inside a view box, so that the height will, the total size will occupy whatever we give it. Which means, what I mean is, when you go here, you can define the height and width. So let's save, rebuild. So it will occupy the whole height, whatever is available. So you can specify the height here. Instead of specifying the height there, you can say height is 60, and it will occupy accordingly. Now going back to our animated rectangle, we not only need a rectangle, we need one more thing. So let us make it as a grid dot row definitions row definitions, row definition, and row definition. This row, let it be height is auto, and let us give a text here. Text block, text is I am loading, please wait. Loading, please wait. That looks fine at present. And this one is currently here, but we don't need it like that, so we put grid.row as first row, and let us add some margin here. Margin 0 space 5, so we have a space of 5 and above and below. And this text block color, we don't need this dark black, we will give somewhat like this and go back. So I am loading, please wait, save. This all looks fine. Now what we do, this loading rectangle, let us add an animation. The animation will happen whenever the rectangle is loaded by itself. So rectangle dot triggers. Usually what we do, if you need the other kind of triggers like the property trigger or the data trigger, you need to specify the style for this rectangle, and inside the style you need to specify the triggers. But in our case, we don't need property trigger or we don't need data trigger. We are not going to depend upon any kind of changes there. What we need is an event trigger whenever our application is loaded. So event trigger, event name is loaded. Whenever our rectangle is loaded, just run this animation. So what is my animation? We need to rotate this one. Before we rotate, we need some properties to be, because we will be using double animation. Double animation itself will work when the properties are already set. For a rotation to happen, first let us initiate the rotation. Go here to the transform, the rotator, let's put some random value. So the reason why I put some random value is you need the origin. Origin means 0.5, 0.5 is nothing but your center. Basically the left top is 0, 0. Right bottom is 1, 1. So obviously 0.5 in the sense middle of x, and 0.5 is middle of y. So that's why you have the origin in the center, 0.5 to 0.5, and it's now coming under group, render transform group. And let us remove the angle, because we just wanted this group to be created by itself. There are two ways how we can handle this now. If you're not going to deal with other kind of like other kind of transform, you can just put this rotate transform inside your render transform. So it's not a group, it's a single single transform, but we will keep it as is now. We will discuss about it shortly. What happens when we load this? So whenever the event trigger is started, we need to enter into an action. The action is the storyboard action. So begin a storyboard. So when we say begin storyboard, we need to give it a storyboard. That's the content that it expects. So what I'm saying is, whenever the event load happens, enter into an action. What is the action? Beginning a storyboard. So whenever it is unloaded, you will again enter into an action called remove storyboard. That action will be called as exit action, but we are not going to deal with that now. So the storyboard is here. Storyboard itself is a double animation. Okay, what are we animating? So the name itself is there. It's a double value. There are different animations. Double animation is there. Point animation is there, and color animation is there. So each animation is going to animate the property. So when you say double animation, which means it's not two animations, it means the value should be a double value. Basically, it should be a numerical value double. You will be animating that value from value to value. So here what I'm saying, I'm going to animate the rotate transform. We will go back to the property for later, but first I need to animate the value from 0 to 360. So just rotate the value from 0 to 360, and the repeat behavior is there, which should be forever, which means it should continue forever. And how long? The duration I need is hour 0, minute 0, and seconds 1. So do it for 1 second from 0 to 360. This is all fine at present. I am saying that okay, I need a double animation, but where the double animation on, under which property? Because there are so many property. Width is there, height is there, and which property you want this value to be applied to. I'm saying that this property should be my rotate transform. Where is the rotate transform? If it is some kind of a width or height, it is very straightforward. I will just say height or width, but my rotate transform is not straightforward. It is present inside render transform. There is a property called render transform, inside which I have a group, inside which I have some children. Inside the children I have called something called as rotate transform. So I need to go all the way there. This property itself is a attached property, which means you need to call the class name or the class name where the attached property is present. Attached property, because when I press F12 into my double animation, I will not find the property. I have from, I have to, and if I let us down, minimize this, I have from, I have to. I don't have the actual property method itself, which is the property name, and that is a that is present in storyboard. If you go to the storyboard, you will have a lot of these are all attached properties. Storyboard contains property name. This is the class storyboard. I'm not able to find the property name method here, but it is there. Maybe it is written in a different class, but it itself is present inside storyboard dot target name. Sorry, target property. If I press F12 here, you will see that this is an attached property. Get target property. Target property. Set target property. Okay, let us not linger over here. Let's go back. What is my property? My property is inside rectangle. So rectangle dot, where is it? Inside render transform. Copy this render transform. It is inside render transform dot. It is present inside something called transform group. Okay, bracket transform group. And whether is it a direct property of transform group? If transform group itself contains some properties like name, blah 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 blah, you can directly call. But no, it is not present in transform group. It is present inside transform group. Transform group contains children. So you cannot put transform group directly. You need to put children. The reason is, if you are adding some values like angle, rotate, those directly apply to the transform group. But no, we are dealing with the children. There are 4 children at present, 0, 1, 2. So I am dealing with my 4th children. Sorry, second children. What is the second children? Rotate, transform, and it contains what? Angle. So I am saying that rectangle render transform contains a transform group. Inside that I have children 0, 1, 2. Go to my second children, which is a rotate transform, and it has a property called angle. Just animate that angle property from 0 to 360. Let us run this now. Now our animation should work. Wow, it's very fast. I will change it to 2 and save. Let's see if it's applied. That's the problem with animations. Once it is loaded, it is loaded. You can, even if you change during debug, it will not work. So you need to restart that. Let's restart and see how it is. Now it should be slow little. Okay, now it is okay, little bit okay. But this one is not storyboard, right? So we can add some property values here. I will say 10 0 comma 10 comma 0 comma 0. So my height here is ready increased to 15. What's happening? Okay, so just because I am putting it inside a view box, my text is not taking up. So even if I remove it, it will not make any difference. Very good. So let us do one thing. Inside this margin, let us put a margin of 0 comma 20. Cool. We have the margin here. Go back to our main window. Height should not be 80, height should be 80. Or maybe height should be 100. I am loading, please wait. That's cool. Now what we need, we have an animated rectangle. but we need to control two things. Like one rectangle is not sufficient enough, it doesn't make it's not that much attractive or charming. Let us make two rectangles, two different colors, and both of them loads at a different time, so that it gives a different feel. That's our end goal. But we will not be creating two different rectangles. Instead, what we do, we will take some of the properties into the rectangle, and we can change it during runtime. So the first thing is, what we need this color to be changeable from outside, one, and we need this to value to be changeable, to value, and duration should be changeable. Let us press F12 in the duration to see what kind of property it is. Yeah, the property itself is kind of a duration property. Okay, and this 2 is kind of, it should be a double property, we know that already. So it's a double property, and the duration is a duration property. We don't know what is duration property, that's fine. So we need double property, we need duration property, and we need stroke property, which is nothing but a brush. So we need stroke, we need duration, and finally we need two duration, stroke, and then you need text. So you basically need 4 properties. Go to the code behind, quickly create prop dp. Dp stands for dependency property, and it's a shortcut key. First is double two property, and owner class is animated rectangle, and this 2 let us make with a question mark, so which means that it could be, it's a nullable property, so by default let it be null. Okay, 1 done, 2 properties done. Then prop dp, our starting value, let us say 360. We don't need to deal with other values. Prop dp, and next value is string value, and it's called as message animated rectangle, and the message is I am loading, please wait. Okay, so 2 things are done now. And third, we have a brush, right? So prop dp brush, and this brush will be called as fill color, and animated rectangle, and brushes dot gray. So by default let us have the gray color. Okay, fine, and we are done with 3. And finally we have something called duration property. We don't know what it is, but let us just keep it as duration, and the duration property animated rectangle, and what is the default duration? What is a duration? Duration is a struct, which means that it is a struct object, a struct kind of object, and the struct cannot be having a new, so which means that you cannot have a new struct, it will not accept. I'm not sure, again, we cannot with a lot of changes happening around .NET 6, I don't want to say something. There is one thing that we can be very sure about. If you don't know whether the new initialization will work or not, you can always go with one thing called default duration. If it doesn't support new, whatever is the default, it will be accepted. So that's a safe bet that we can take there. Let's take a default duration, that's fine. So we have now everything that we need, and go back to the animated rectangle. Now let's start binding this. Let's remove this resource, I don't think we need it anymore. Let's start binding these values from the code behind. So what we have here, binding relative sources, relative source, ancestor type, and it's not level, it's a type. Ancestor type is, it's a type of animated rectangle, and from this ancestor I'm going, this is my source is animated rectangle ancestor, which means it will go here and it will find the type of animated rectangle. So it's basically the same code behind object, and source is there. Path is nothing but your stroke. Wow. When it is called as stroke, why did we name it as fill? Let's rename the fill as stroke. 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, stroke. Let's go back here and path, let's say stroke, and I think that is more than enough. We binded it to stroke, and in case it doesn't update during runtime, we can always come back and say path is there, and update source, notify on source updated is true, and update source trigger is property changed. I don't think those things are needed, but let us copy this whole item. Stroke thickness should also be there, but let us keep it as 2 at present. If needed for your development, you can always do it. And here I will just put it, and 360 is what? It's not my this 2, and then what else we have? This text we have, and text we call it as message. So we binder the stroke, we binder the message to, and duration is the last thing. That's the most important thing. Let's take this binding and say, where are we? Duration. Okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay, now that we are done here, go back to our main window. Wow, we are running it. Anyhow, let's run this and see whether it works or not. If it doesn't work, we will fix the things later. So it's working. First and foremost thing what we need, let's try to change the color. Stroke we will change to red, and it's working. And message, I will say my message is hello there. Message is also working, and duration is 0:0:1. It should not work because obviously it is what, it's a trigger. So basically when the trigger is already there, it will not work. It's very fast. Let's save and reload. But why did the duration doesn't work? Because when you don't set the 2 duration, okay, we didn't set the 2. When you don't set the 2, what happens is it starts from 0 and ends at 0. So let's set the 2 at 360, and for 360 it takes 2 seconds. Basically it's the same. If you don't give 0, it remains the same. Perfect there, perfect. So now that we know that our rectangle works, all we need to do is just duplicate it. Now this time, if you see, we already are running there. One of my rectangle will reach 360, other of my rectangle will reach 180, and the speed itself I will say within 1 second go to 360. This one you take 280, and I don't need a message for the second one. And if I don't need a message, then it will be showing me the default message. That is also wrong. So I should not be having a default message, which should be string.empty. Don't show a message if it is not applicable. And going back to my application, height is fine, color is gray, so which means that I have a gray color and everything is fine. Let us just say only display controls and then say load controls. Okay, so instead of running the application, this looks fine. And this should be 2. Let's save, show only display controls and display all controls. This looks fantastic, but why my I'm loading is still there? I'm confused. Hello there is still there. Let's go there to our animated rectangle, and that is fine, and even here this is fine, and main XAML is also fine. Okay, everything is fine. So all we need to do is just run our application. Let's see. That's fantastic. This is what we need, right? So we have some message here, and this animation looks little better. And let's do this. Instead of hello there, authenticating, please wait. You can say something like this. You can add a message, and the whole height, you don't need to stick to 100. You can say 200 and just say 200 here, or maybe 150 will make sense. So small size, 150 to 150. So your animation is now looking nice, and this is what we need. So that looks cool. So we have finally made progress with the um, the animated rectangle progress loading bar. And in your case, wherever you have some long running process, you can just display this too, and based upon some triggers or based upon some properties, like you have a long running property, you are waiting for something, you can just change the property, and based upon property you can run this progress bar, and after it is done you can change it back. So that's it. I hope this makes some sense, and I will meet you all in another video. Thank you.